The 1842 Retreat from Kabul, rewritten for 5th grade students. January 13, 1842, Jalalabad, British India. The guard on the eastern wall sees him first. A lone figure walking across the snowy field, swaying in the saddle of a half-dead pony. The animal's ribs press against its skin like the bars of a cage. The rider is slumped forward, one arm hanging limp. His uniform is so covered in frozen blood it's nearly black. "Rider approaching!" the guard shouts. Officers rush to the walls. They raise their telescopes. Someone recognizes the torn pieces of a British medical officer's coat. The gates swing open. Soldiers run across the frozen ground. The rider slides from his pony and falls face first into the snow. General Sir Robert Sale, commander of the Jalalabad fort, kneels beside him. The man's head is wrapped in a dirty bandage. His face is so blackened by frostbite and powder burns, he's barely recognizable as human. "Where is the column?" Sale demands. "Where is General Elphinstone? Where are the troops?" The man's eyes open. They are pale, haunted, and empty. His voice comes out as a whisper. "I am the column." Sale leans closer. "What?" "I am the army." 16,500 people left Kabul 7 days ago. One man made it out. His name is Dr. William Brydon, and this is the story of how an entire British army was swallowed by the mountains of Afghanistan, and why, more than 180 years later, those mountains are still called the Graveyard of Empires. If this story grips you the way it gripped me when I first learned it, hit that like button and drop a comment below. It genuinely helps us bring more forgotten history to light. Now let me take you back to where it all began. December 1841, Kabul, Afghanistan. The snow falls soft and silent on the British cantonment, covering everything in white. The low mud brick walls, the scattered barracks, the parade ground where no one parades anymore. Dr. William Brydon stands at the window of the medical quarters, watching snowflakes settle on the shoulders of sentries who stamp their feet against the cold and glance nervously toward the city. He's 29 years old, an assistant surgeon with the East India Company's Army of the Indus. He's not a soldier. He's a doctor, but he's been in Afghanistan long enough to recognize the smell of disaster. The cantonment is a masterpiece of military stupidity. It sprawls across nearly a square mile of open ground northeast of Kabul, far too large to defend with the forces available. The walls are barely 5 feet high in places, low enough for a man to leap over. The ammunition stores are scattered in separate buildings across the compound, instead of being together in one place. The food storage area, where all the food is kept, sits on the far edge of the cantonment, exposed and vulnerable. Worst of all, the entire position is overlooked by a fortress called the Bala Hissar, held by Afghan forces, and by a series of low hills that offer perfect positions to shoot into the compound. Brydon had heard the arguments when the cantonment was built 2 years ago. The chief engineer warned it was impossible to defend. Major Eldred Pottinger, the political officer, called it suicide. But Sir William Macnaghten, the British representative to Afghanistan, the man who planned this entire doomed occupation, insisted on greatness. "We are here to civilize," Macnaghten had said. "We must show strength and permanence." Now, in December of 1841, 16,500 people are trapped inside those low walls, and the city of Kabul has turned against them. The cantonment holds 4,500 fighting men. The 44th Regiment of Foot, the 5th Light Cavalry, the Shah's 6th Regiment, multiple Bengal Native Infantry battalions, irregular cavalry and artillery companies. They are British officers and soldiers, Indian sepoys, irregular Afghan troops loyal to Shah Shuja, the puppet king the British installed. And then there are the 12,000 camp followers. This is the invisible army that follows every East India Company force into the field. Wives and children of British soldiers and sepoys, personal servants, grooms, cooks, merchants, blacksmiths, water carriers, sweepers, laundresses, the entire civilian support system necessary to keep a 19th century military occupation running. Brydon treats them all: frostbite, dysentery, malnutrition, knife wounds from fights over the last scraps of firewood. He does what he can with shrinking supplies and no hope of getting more. The city's markets have been closed to the British for weeks. The Afghan chiefs, once bribed into cooperation with British gold, have risen in open revolt under the leadership of Akbar Khan, son of the removed Emir Dost Muhammad. On November 2, 1841, a mob stormed the home of Sir Alexander Burnes, Macnaghten's deputy, a man who spoke fluent Persian and believed he understood Afghan politics. They tore him apart in the street. His brother, Lieutenant Charles Burnes, died beside him. Their bodies were dragged through the Kabul bazaar while British officers watched from the cantonment walls and debated whether to help. They decided not to. Major General William Elphinstone, the garrison commander, called a council of war. Officers argued for hours. Brigadier John Shelton demanded an immediate attack to rescue Burnes. Elphinstone hesitated. Macnaghten urged caution. By the time a decision was made, Burnes was dead and the city was in full revolt. That was when Brydon knew they were all dead men. He turns from the window and walks through the medical ward. 40 men lie on cots, most suffering from frostbite or fever. British privates, sepoys from the Bengal regiments, irregular cavalry, a gunner from the artillery who lost 3 fingers to frostbite and infection. Brydon checks the gunner's hand. The stumps are healing poorly. Without proper medical supplies, gangrene is setting in. "Am I going home, doctor?" the gunner asks. Brydon meets his eyes. "You'll be on your feet soon enough." It's a lie, but it's a kind one. Outside, a distant crack of gunfire echoes from the hills. Brydon doesn't flinch. The sniping has been constant for days. Afghan marksmen picking off sentries, officers, anyone foolish enough to stand in the open. The British try to return fire, but the enemy is invisible, shooting from rooftops and compounds, vanishing before anyone can shoot back. The cantonment is not under siege, it's under slow strangulation. Brydon steps outside into the compound. The cantonment is crowded, chaotic, a small city crammed inside walls that aren't good enough. Near the western wall, he sees clusters of camp followers, women and children huddled around small fires trying to stay warm. The wives of British soldiers from the 44th Regiment, the families of sepoys from the 27th and 35th Bengal Native Infantry, Afghan servants who worked for British officers and are now trapped, neither British nor fully Afghan, belonging nowhere. Children play in the snow, their faces red with cold. Mothers watch them with hollow eyes. These 12,000 people are entirely dependent on the soldiers for protection. They have no weapons. Most have no winter clothing good enough for the Afghan winter. If the cantonment falls, they fall with it. Brydon watches a woman trying to cook over a tiny fire made from scraps of wood. She has 3 children, all under the age of 10. The smallest is coughing, a wet, rattling sound that Brydon recognizes. Pneumonia, probably. Without medicine, the child will be dead within a week. He doesn't approach. There's nothing he can give her. His medical supplies are nearly empty. He walks across the parade ground toward the officers' quarters. The cantonment is organized by rank and unit. British officers have their own compound. The enlisted men of the 44th Regiment are housed separately. The sepoy battalions have their own lines. The cavalry is quartered near the stables. And the camp followers fill every remaining space, gathering wherever they can find shelter. Near the eastern wall, he passes the lines of the 44th Regiment of Foot, Her Majesty's 44th, the only British infantry regiment in the garrison. 2 companies, about 200 men, commanded by officers who've served in India for years. They're professionals, disciplined. But Brydon can see the strain in their faces. Weeks of short rations, constant sniping, the knowledge that they're trapped. The sepoy battalions are in worse shape. The men of the 27th, 35th, and 37th Bengal Native Infantry are loyal. They fought for the company for years, some for decades. But they're far from home, surrounded by enemy forces, commanded by British officers who are frozen by indecision. Rumors spread through the sepoy lines that the British will abandon them, take the cavalry and European troops, and leave the Indian soldiers to negotiate their own surrender with Akbar Khan. Brydon doesn't know if the rumors are true, but he knows fear when he sees it. Major General William Elphinstone commands the garrison. He is 60 years old, crippled by gout and rheumatism, and completely unable to make a decision. Brydon saw him once 2 weeks ago at a medical inspection. The general had to be helped from his horse. His hands shook, his face was gray. He looked like a man already dead, waiting for someone to tell him he could lie down. Elphinstone had been a good officer once, 40 years ago, under Wellington at Waterloo. But that man is long gone, replaced by a sick old man who spends his days in his quarters writing letters to his superiors in India, begging for permission to retreat. The permission never comes, and so the cantonment rots. The command structure is frozen by infighting. Brigadier John Shelton, Elphinstone's second-in-command, openly hates the general and makes no effort to hide it. Shelton is aggressive, arrogant, and hateful of the camp followers, whom he calls useless mouths. He argues for an immediate attack on Kabul to reassert British control. Sir William McNagden, the political representative, refuses. He still believes negotiation is possible. He still believes he can manage Afghan politics through gold and diplomacy. Major Eldred Pottinger, a political officer who was wounded defending the Kohistan region before retreating to Kabul, urges an immediate fighting withdrawal to Jalalabad, 90 miles to the east. "We break out now," he argues in the councils of war, "before the passes fill with snow. We take the cavalry, the best infantry, travel light, and fight our way through." "And the camp followers?" Elphinstone asks. "We leave a volunteer rearguard with them and negotiate their surrender separately. We do not abandon British women and children." "They will die if we stay," Pottinger snaps. "We negotiate." And so they do nothing. Supplies shrink. Firewood runs out. Men begin burning furniture, then saddles, then anything that will catch flame. The temperature drops below freezing every night. Sentries are found frozen at their posts. The horses, starving and weak, begin to die. The cavalry slaughters them for meat. Brydon watches it all from the medical quarters and understands with cold clarity that the leadership has failed. Elphinstone cannot decide. Shelton and McNagden cannot agree. Pottinger is ignored. He begins preparing for the inevitable. He packs a small medical kit. Bandages, surgical needles, a scalpel, his last 2 bottles of laudanum. He gets a pistol from a dying artillery officer, a lieutenant who took a musket ball through the lung and knows he won't survive. The lieutenant hands Brydon the pistol and 12 rounds of ammunition. "You'll need this more than me, doctor." Brydon gets a pony from the stables, a thin, tough little animal from the Afghan hills. the kind that can survive on almost nothing. He feeds it from his own rations, hoarding scraps of grain. The other surgeons notice his preparations but say nothing. They're making their own plans. On December 11th, the Council of War meets in Macnagden's quarters. Brydon is not present, but he hears the outcome within an hour. Macnagden has made contact with Akbar Khan. The Afghan leader has offered terms. The British will be allowed to withdraw to Jalalabad with honor. They may keep their personal weapons and 6 artillery pieces, light mountain guns. In exchange, they will leave Kabul peacefully and never return. It is the best we can hope for, Macnagden announces. Pottinger, still recovering from his wound, argues against it. It is a trap. Akbar Khan wants us in the passes where we cannot maneuver. He will slaughter us. He has given his word as a chief, Macnagden insists. He gave Sir Alexander Burnes assurances. They found pieces of him in 3 different streets. Elphinstone says nothing. He stares at his hands as if they belong to someone else. The vote is called. The majority sides with Macnagden. They will accept Akbar Khan's terms. They will leave Kabul. When Brydon hears the news, he walks out into the snow and stares at the mountains to the east. The Hindu Kush rises in jagged white peaks, beautiful and merciless. Somewhere beyond those peaks lies Jalalabad, 90 miles, 5 mountain passes, in winter. He thinks about the 12,000 camp followers who have never marched through mountain passes, who have no weapons, who are already starving. He thinks about 60-year-old General Elphinstone trying to command a fighting retreat. He thinks about Akbar Khan's promise of safe passage. Then he goes back inside and adds 3 more rounds of ammunition to his kit. December 23, 1841. Sir William Macnaghten rides out of the cantonment to meet Akbar Khan in person. He takes 3 officers with him, Captain Robert Trevor, Captain George Lawrence, and Lieutenant John Eyre. The meeting is supposed to finalize the terms of the British withdrawal. Macnaghten is confident. He has negotiated with Afghan chiefs for 2 years. He believes he understands them. Brydon is in the medical quarters when the shout goes up from the walls. They've taken him! He runs outside. Other officers are already racing toward the walls. Brydon climbs the ladder to the walkway and stares across the snowy field. The meeting ground is half a mile away, near a low compound. Macnaghten's party is surrounded by Afghan horsemen, too many, moving too fast. There is a struggle. Horses rear, men shout. A gunshot cracks across the stillness. Macnaghten is dragged from his saddle. Brydon watches, frozen, as the British representative disappears into the mass of riders. Lieutenant Eyre is shot and falls from his horse. Captain Trevor is pulled from his mount, screaming. Captain Lawrence tries to fight his way to Macnaghten and is overwhelmed. The Afghans wheel their horses and gallop toward Kabul, dragging something behind them. It takes Brydon a moment to realize it's Macnaghten's body. The cantonment explodes into chaos. Officers run from building to building, shouting orders, canceling each other. Shelton demands an immediate assault on the city. Pottinger argues for an instant breakout toward Jalalabad. Elphinstone locks himself in his quarters and will not come out. By evening, the news filters back from the city. Macnaghten's severed head is on display in the Kabul bazaar. His hands have been cut off and paraded through the streets on poles. Afghan chiefs are celebrating in the Bala Hissar. Captain Lawrence, badly wounded, is the only officer who makes it back alive. He's brought to the medical quarters. Brydon treats his wounds. A sword cut across the forearm, deep bruises from being beaten. Lawrence lies on the cot, trembling, staring at the ceiling. "It was planned," Lawrence whispers. all of it. They were waiting. I know, Brydon says quietly. Are we getting out of here? I don't know. Lawrence closes his eyes and doesn't speak again. That night, a messenger arrives from Akbar Khan. Despite the unfortunate incident involving Macnaghten, the offer of safe passage still stands. The British may leave with their personal weapons and limited artillery. They will not be harmed. The senior officers meet for another council. Pottinger, exhausted and furious, makes one final argument. This is bait. He murders our representative and then renews his promise. He wants us in the passes. We must fight our way out now, tonight, with the cavalry and the strongest units. It's brutal, but it's our only chance. And abandon 12,000 people? Someone asks. They're dead either way. At least give the fighting men a chance. Elphinstone, coming out of his quarters for the first time in days, his face gray and tired, shakes his head. We are British officers. We do not abandon women and children. The vote is called. They will accept Akbar Khan's terms. They will leave on January 6, 1842. Brydon hears the decision and feels something cold settle in his chest. They're all going to die. Not all at once, not in a single battle, but slowly over days in the frozen passes between Kabul and Jalalabad. He returns to his quarters and checks his preparations one final time. Pistol, 12 rounds. Medical kit, limited supplies. Pony, barely fed but still standing. Papers from home. Letters from his family in Scotland. Medical notes. A sketch his sister sent. He folds them carefully and tucks them into his military cap, layering them against the inner lining. He doesn't know why. The papers are worthless. But leaving them behind feels like abandoning the last piece of himself that isn't a surgeon, isn't a soldier, isn't a man about to walk into hell. Outside, the snow continues to fall. Inside the cantonment, 16,500 people prepare to leave. Most of them don't know they're preparing to die. December 24, 1841. The day after the murder, the cantonment is frozen. Brydon moves through the medical quarters in the gray dawn light, stepping over men who haven't slept. Some are weeping. Others sit in silence, staring at nothing. A young officer from the 5th Light Cavalry vomits in the corner, then wipes his mouth and vomits again. No one speaks of retreat anymore. No one speaks of negotiation. They speak only of what they saw from the walls. Macnagten's hands, severed at the wrists, displayed on poles in the Kabul bazaar. His head mounted on a spike outside the Bala Hissar fortress. His legs dragged through the streets by crowds who celebrated the death of the British representative. Captain George Lawrence lies on a cot in the corner, the only officer from yesterday's meeting party to survive. Brydon had treated him through the night. A deep sword cut across the forearm, severe bruising across his ribs and back from being beaten. Lawrence stares at the ceiling, his lips moving in silent repetition of the same words. They were waiting. It was planned. All of it. Brydon changes his bandages in silence. When he finishes, Lawrence grabs his wrist. "We're not getting out of here, are we, Doctor?" Brydon looks into the captain's eyes and sees a man who already knows the answer. No. Lawrence nods slowly, as if the answer brings some kind of relief. Then he releases Brydon's wrist and turns his face to the wall. By mid-morning, the command structure has collapsed entirely. General Elphinstone refuses to leave his quarters. His personal servant reports that the general is bedridden, unable to walk without help, his gout so severe he cannot stand. Brigadier Shelton storms through the cantonment, shouting contradictory orders. Prepare to assault Kabul. No, form a defensive perimeter. No, organize for withdrawal. The soldiers don't know who to obey. The sepoy battalions wait for orders that never come. The cavalry tends to dying horses. The camp followers huddle in doorways, watching British officers run from building to building in obvious panic. It's Major Eldred Pottinger who finally restores some order. He's still recovering from the gunshot wound to his shoulder that he took defending Kohistan before the retreat to Kabul. His arm is in a sling, his face gray with pain, but his voice cuts through the chaos like a blade. "Form up your companies," he shouts at the officers of the 44th Regiment. "Get your men into defensive positions along the walls. Artillery, position your guns to cover the gates. Move!" The officers scramble to obey. Pottinger is not the senior commander, but he's the only one giving clear, decisive orders. In a crisis, clarity is command. Brydon watches him from the doorway of the medical quarters. Pottinger moves like a man who knows he's dying, but refuses to lie down. There's something relentless about it. One foot in front of the other, one order after another, as if forward movement alone can hold back the inevitable. By noon, a messenger arrives from the city. He's an Afghan boy, no more than 12, carrying a sealed letter. The sentries nearly shoot him before Captain Colin Mackenzie of the Shah's 6th Regiment stops them and brings the boy to the officer's compound. The letter is addressed to the British command. It's written in Persian. Pottinger breaks the seal and reads it aloud to the assembled officers, translating as he goes. The message is from Akbar Khan. He expresses deep regret for the unfortunate incident involving Sir William Magnaten. He blames troublemakers beyond his control, tribal chiefs whose passions overwhelmed their judgment. He assures the British that he personally did not order the killing. And he reaffirms his offer. The British may withdraw to Jalalabad with honor. They will not be harmed. They have his word. Pottinger finishes reading and looks up at the assembled officers. 20 men stare back at him. Captains, lieutenants, officers of various ranks, the remaining leadership of a dying garrison. "He's lying," Pottinger says flatly. Shelton steps forward. "We have no choice. We cannot hold through winter. Supplies are exhausted. The men are on quarter rations. Another week and we'll be eating the dead. Then we fight our way out tonight. The cavalry, the 44th, the strongest sepoy companies. We move fast and fight through. And abandon 12,000 camp followers? They will die in the passes anyway, but a fighting column might reach Jalalabad." Shelton's face hardens. "I will not put my name to an order that abandons British women and children to slavery and death." "Then you'll put your name to an order that kills them in the snow instead." The argument continues for an hour. Voices rise. Men shout over each other. Captain Mackenzie suggests sending another representative to negotiate better terms. Lieutenant Henry Harding of the 5th Light Cavalry proposes surrendering the cantonment entirely and throwing themselves on Akbar Khan's mercy as prisoners of war. Pottinger listens to it all with growing disgust. Finally, he turns and walks out of the meeting. Brydon is waiting outside. "They're going to accept the offer, aren't they?" Pottinger stops, his back to Brydon. "Yes." "Even though it's a trap?" "Yes." "Why?" Pottinger turns. His face is tired, hollowed out by pain and exhaustion, and the weight of being the only man in the garrison who sees clearly what's coming. "Because the alternative is admitting we came here for nothing. That we invaded this country, installed a puppet king no one wanted, occupied Kabul for 2 years, and bled ourselves dry for no purpose. Men cannot accept that. so they choose the lie that lets them believe there's still hope. He walks away across the frozen parade ground, his breath steaming in the cold air. Brydon stands alone, watching him go. That night, the decision is made official. The British will accept Akbar Khan's terms. They will leave Kabul on January 6, 1842. The days between December 24th and January 6th are a slow descent into hell. Supplies run out entirely. The garrison is on starvation rations, 4 ounces of grain per day, shared between soldiers and camp followers. Men slaughter the last of the cavalry horses for meat. The 5th Light Cavalry, once mounted on some of the finest horses in India, is now largely on foot. The animals are butchered and divided among the troops. The camp followers are in worse condition. The 12,000 civilians have no organized supply system. They survive on scraps, on charity from soldiers who can barely feed themselves, on whatever they can find in the increasingly bare cantonment. Brydon sees children with swollen bellies, the classic sign of starvation. He sees women boiling leather straps to make a kind of soup. He sees old men sitting motionless in the snow, too weak to move, waiting to die. Firewood is gone. Families burn their furniture, their carts, their children's toys, anything that will produce heat. The temperature drops to 10 below zero at night. Sentries are found frozen at their posts, their hands still gripping their muskets, their eyes open and glazed. The medical quarters overflow. Brydon works without rest, treating frostbite, dysentery, pneumonia, starvation. He amputates blackened toes and fingers with a dull scalpel because he has no other tools. He doses men with the last of his laudanum and watches them die anyway. A gunner from the artillery is brought in with both feet frozen solid. Brydon examines him and shakes his head. "I can take the feet, but you won't survive the shock, not in your condition." The gunner looks up at him with sunken eyes. "Do it anyway, doctor. I do not wish to die whole." Brydon performs the amputation. The man dies 3 hours later. On January 1, 1842, the final terms are negotiated. Akbar Khan's representatives meet with the British officers outside the cantonment. The agreement is made official. The British will leave on January 6th. They may take their personal weapons, rifles, pistols, swords. They may take 6 artillery pieces, 9-pounder mountain guns light enough to be moved quickly. All heavy guns will be spiked and abandoned. The British will provide hostages as a guarantee of good behavior. Senior officers and their families will be placed in Akbar Khan's protective custody until the column reaches Jalalabad safely. Then the hostages will be released. The hostages will include wives and children of officers, a deliberate choice to make sure the British keep to the agreement. In return, Akbar Khan promises that the column will not be attacked. They will have safe passage through the passes. When the terms are announced to the garrison, a murmur runs through the troops. The sepoys of the Bengal Native Infantry mutter to each other in Hindustani. The men of the 44th Regiment exchange dark looks. The cavalry officers argue quietly among themselves. Everyone understands what the hostage clause means. The British are handing power to a man who murdered their representative under a flag of truce. But no one refuses, because the alternative is staying in Kabul and starving to death. Pottinger is ordered to join the hostages. He refuses violently. "I will not give myself into the hands of a man who butchered MacNaughton and paraded his body through the streets." Shelton argues with him. Elphinstone, carried into the meeting on a stretcher, barely conscious, begs him, "Your presence will ensure our safety. Akbar Khan respects you. He knows your worth." "He'll kill me the moment I'm in his power." "Please, Pottinger, for the women, for the children." Captain Colin McIntyre, who has served with Pottinger for years, steps forward and speaks quietly. "Eldred, if you don't go, they'll name someone else, an officer with a wife, with children. Let it be you." Pottinger goes still. His jaw works. His good hand clenches into a fist. Then, slowly, he nods. "I'll go." Brydon watches from across the compound as Pottinger joins the group of hostages being assembled. The Major's face is unreadable, but his shoulders are tight with held-back fury. They'll never see him again, Brydon thinks, or, if they do, it will be as a corpse. On January 5th, the eve of departure, the cantonment begins the final preparations. What little remains in the storehouses is distributed. Ammunition is rationed. 20 rounds per man for the infantry, less for the cavalry. The artillery crews are given powder and shot for the 6 mountain guns, enough for 30 rounds per gun if they're lucky. The camp followers are told to pack light, 1 bundle per family. No carts, no furniture, only what they can carry on their backs. Many don't understand. They've followed the army for years, gathered possessions, built small lives in the margins of the British occupation. Now they're being told to abandon everything. Brydon sees women standing in doorways, staring at piles of belongings they have to leave behind. Cooking pots, blankets, children's clothes. The small treasures that make life bearable. They take what they can and leave the rest. That evening, Brydon makes a final round of the cantonment. He passes the lines of the 44th Regiment. The men are checking their weapons, cleaning muskets, sharpening bayonets. They're professionals, disciplined, but Brydon can see the fear in their faces. 200 men of the 44th, commanded by officers who know what's coming. Captain James Skinner, the senior captain, moves among his men, speaking quietly, steadying them. "We've marched through worse," Skinner tells them, though everyone knows it's a lie. "We are Her Majesty's 44th. We do not break." The men nod, but their eyes say otherwise. Brydon moves on to the sepoy lines. The battalions of the 27th, 35th, and 37th Bengal Native Infantry are formed up in their company areas. These are professional soldiers. Some have served the East India Company for 15 years, fought in campaigns across India. They're loyal, disciplined, but they're also far from home, commanded by British officers who failed them at every turn. He hears them talking quietly in Hindustani. Some are writing letters to families in Bengal, though they have no way to send them. Others are praying, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, each to their own gods, asking for protection in the mountains. Near the artillery park, Brydon finds the 6 mountain guns that will accompany the column. 9-pounders, light enough to be pulled by a few men or a single horse. The gun crews are loading ammunition, solid shot, case shot, a few explosive shells. Not much, not enough. An artillery officer sees Brydon and shakes his head. 6 guns, Doctor. 6 guns to defend 16,000 people across 90 miles of hostile territory. Might as well bring a pocket knife to a sword fight. Brydon doesn't disagree. He returns to his quarters and checks his preparations one final time. His pony is in the stables, barely fed but still standing. He's hoarded what grain he could, fed it to the animal at night when no one was watching. The pony is thin, ribs showing, but it has the tough, wiry look of the Afghan hill breeds. It might survive where the pampered cavalry horses will fail. His medical kit is packed. Bandages, scalpel, 2 bottles of laudanum, his entire remaining supply. A few surgical needles. His pistol is loaded. 12 rounds of ammunition in his pocket. And the papers. In his cap. Letters from Scotland, from his sister, from home. He folds them carefully and tucks them into the lining of his military cap. He sits on his cot and stares at the wall. Tomorrow, 16,500 people will walk out of the cantonment and into the passes. Most of them will never come back. Brydon knows this with absolute certainty. The only question is whether he'll be one of the few who survives. He lies down, fully dressed, his kit beside him. He doesn't expect to sleep, but exhaustion pulls him under within minutes. He dreams of Scotland, green hills, cold rain, his sister's voice calling him home for supper. He wakes 2 hours before dawn. The cantonment is already stirring. Voices, footsteps, the creak of leather and the jangle of harnesses. Somewhere, a child is crying. Brydon stands, straps on his kit, checks his pistol one last time, and steps outside. The sky is black, starless. The temperature has dropped below zero. 16,500 people are preparing to leave. Almost none of them will survive. The column moves like a dying snake. Brydon rides near the middle, positioned with the medical staff and their carts. Ahead of him, he can see the rear ranks of the 44th Regiment of Foot, 200 men in red coats marching in formation. Behind him stretches the vast mass of camp followers, a river of humanity 5 miles long, moving at the pace of the slowest child. It's barely past dawn. They've been moving for 20 minutes, and already the formation is breaking apart. The plan, such as it was, called for the cavalry to lead, followed by the infantry regiments, then the artillery with their 6 9-pounder mountain guns, then the supply train, and finally the camp followers, protected by a rear guard. The plan lasted about 10 minutes. The road east from Kabul is narrow, choked with snow, flanked on both sides by high compound walls. The cavalry at the front, what's left of the 5th Light Cavalry, now mostly dismounted because their horses were eaten, can barely move in columns of 2. The infantry tries to maintain formation, but the road is too narrow. The artillery struggles to move the guns through snow that's knee-deep in places. And the camp followers have no formation at all. They surge and bunch. 12,000 people trying to move through a space meant for hundreds. Carts overturn, families get separated, children fall and are nearly trampled. The column halts, starts, halts again. Progress is agonizing. 1 mile per hour, less. Brydon rides with his medical kit strapped to his saddle, his pistol tucked into his coat. His pony is nervous, head-tossing, sensing the tension. He pats its neck and keeps it moving forward. Around him, the other medical staff struggle with their carts. 3 carts carrying bandages, medicines, surgical instruments. The entire medical support system for 16,000 people. The carts are heavy, pulled by starving horses that can barely walk. Within the first mile, 1 cart overturns. Medical supplies spill into the snow. Bottles of laudanum shatter. Bandages scatter. Instruments are lost in the drifts. The medical staff try to save what they can, but the column is moving, and they can't stop. Brydon watches morphine and quinine, precious, irreplaceable medicines, disappear into the trampled snow. The first death comes before they've cleared the outskirts of Kabul. A camp follower, an old man carrying a heavy bundle, collapses in the snow. Heart failure, probably, or simple exhaustion. People try to help him, but the press of the crowd is too great. The column moves past him. Within minutes, he's trampled. No one stops. The road winds through the outskirts of Kabul, past compounds and houses. The walls are silent, no movement, no faces in the windows. But Brydon can feel eyes on them. The entire city is watching. 2 miles from the cantonment, the road widens slightly. The column spreads out. The pace increases. For a moment, officers begin to hope that perhaps the worst fears are wrong. Perhaps Akbar Khan will honor his word. Then the first shot cracks out. A British officer of the 5th Light Cavalry, Lieutenant Henry Harding, jerks in his saddle and falls. His horse bolts. Men shout. The column halts, bunching up, everyone looking for the source of the shot. Another crack. A sepoy from the 37th Bengal Native Infantry drops. Then another, and another. The rooftops come alive with muzzle flashes. Afghan Jazals, long-barreled muskets accurate to 100 yards, begin firing from the compounds on both sides of the road. The shooters are invisible, firing from loopholes and walls, dropping back before the British can return fire.
Form line! Return fire! But there's no room to form a line. The road is too narrow, the column too compressed. The infantry tries to return fire, shooting blindly at rooftops. Most shots hit nothing but mud brick. The Afghans fire methodically. One shot, reload, another shot. They're not trying to stop the column, they're bleeding it. Casualties mount rapidly. Officers are targeted first. Their uniforms mark them as valuable. Within 20 minutes, 3 more officers are down. Captain Robert Anderson of the 5th Cavalry is shot through the chest. Lieutenant William Sturt, the garrison engineer, is wounded in the leg but manages to stay in his saddle. The sepoy battalions take heavy losses. The men of the 27th and 35th Bengal Native Infantry march in formation, but they're exposed, unable to take cover on the narrow road. Men drop in their ranks. The formations tighten, close the gaps, keep marching. The camp followers panic. 12,000 civilians, most unarmed, many barefoot, suddenly under fire. They scatter in every direction, pushing against the military formations, breaking whatever organization remains. Families are separated, children are lost in the crush. Brydon watches a woman, a camp follower carrying an infant, struck in the back by a Jazile ball. She falls face first into the snow. The infant rolls free, screaming. A man, perhaps her husband, perhaps a stranger, scoops up the child and keeps walking. The woman doesn't move. Brydon dismounts, pushes through the crowd, checks her pulse. Dead. He remounts. The column has already moved past him. He spurs his pony to catch up. The sniping continues for the next 2 hours. Crack, crack, crack. Each shot deliberate, spaced out, impossible to predict. The column learns to flinch at every sound, but flinching doesn't help. The bullets come anyway. Captain James Skinner, commanding the rear companies of the 44th Regiment, tries to organize a response. He positions sharpshooters to watch the rooftops, orders them to fire at muzzle flashes. It helps slightly. A few Afghan snipers are hit. But for every 1 killed, 2 more take his place. By mid-morning, they've covered 3 miles. 200 people are dead. The road is littered with bodies. British soldiers, sepoys, camp followers. Some are stripped already by scavengers who dart out from the compounds, take weapons and valuables, and disappear. Ahead, the road begins to climb into the foothills. Beyond that, visible in the distance, is the entrance to Kabul Pass, the first major killing ground. They reach the entrance to Kabul Pass at noon. The gorge is a 5-mile defile between sheer cliffs, barely wide enough for the column to move in single file in places. The road is rough, strewn with rocks and ice. The cliffs rise 100 feet on both sides, their tops lined with Ghilzai tribesmen, thousands of them. Brydon can see them from half a mile away, fighters positioned on both sides of the gorge, their long jazayils resting on rocks, waiting. The British column has no choice. This is the only road to Jalalabad. To turn back is to return to Kabul and starvation. To go forward is to enter the killing ground. They go forward. The column funnels into the gorge, and the Ghilzai open fire. The cliffs erupt with gunfire. Hundreds of tribesmen, positioned on both sides, firing down into the compressed column. The sound is deafening. A continuous roar of gunfire echoing off the rock walls, so loud it becomes a physical pressure against the eardrums. Men and animals go down in heaps. There's nowhere to take cover, nowhere to run. The column is trapped in the defile, compressed into a narrow space, less than 20 feet wide in places, unable to maneuver. The cavalry tries to charge ahead, break through the pass. Horses are shot and fall, blocking the road. Men try to drag the carcasses aside. More shots. The men fall. The infantry attempts to return fire. The 44th Regiment forms ranks as best they can in the confined space, aims at the cliff tops, fires volleys. But the Ghilzai are too high, too well protected behind rocks. British volleys hit stone and empty air. The artillery tries to deploy the mountain guns. They manage to unlimber them, load them with case shot, and fire at the cliffs. The explosions are spectacular, showering rock fragments. But the damage is minimal. The tribesmen are too spread out, too well covered. And while the artillery reloads, the jazayil fire continues.
The camp followers are trapped in the center of the column, crushed between the military units ahead and behind. They have no weapons, no protection. They can only huddle together and hope the bullets miss them. They don't. Brydon's pony is grazed by a bullet, a shallow wound across its flank. The animal rears, nearly throws him. He holds on, grips the reins, gets it under control. A bullet whizzes past his head, close enough that he feels the air move. He dismounts, leads the pony on foot, safer to be a smaller target. Around him, the medical staff are being destroyed. One of the 3 medical carts is hit. A lucky shot strikes the driver in the head. He falls. The cart veers off the road and overturns, spilling supplies down the slope. Bandages, bottles, instruments, all lost. Brydon sees a sepoy, a man from the 27th Bengal Native Infantry, shot in the chest. The man staggers, looks down at the wound, blood soaking his uniform, then crumples. Brydon can't stop. There's nothing he can do, no time to treat the wounded. The column keeps moving, stepping over bodies, pushing forward, because forward is the only direction left. Lieutenant Sturt, already wounded in the leg from the morning sniping, is hit again, this time in the shoulder. He stays on his horse, his face white with pain, but he doesn't fall. Captain Skinner moves among his men of the 44th, keeping them steady, preventing panic. Hold formation, keep moving, we'll be through this soon. It's a lie, but it's a necessary one. The gorge goes on forever, 5 miles, 5 miles of continuous killing. The column moves at a crawl. Every 100 yards costs lives, 10, 20, 30 people dead for each small advance. The snow underfoot turns red. Bodies pile in drifts where the road narrows. Brydon sees a group of camp followers, women and children huddled together, struck by a volley of jazayil fire. 3 women fall, 1 child. The survivors scream but cannot stop, cannot bury them, can only keep moving. The fighting is relentless. The Ghilzai have unlimited ammunition, it seems, and unlimited patience. They fire from the cliffs. When British troops try to climb up to dislodge them, the tribesmen retreat, circle around, reappear on another section of cliff. It's not a battle, it's a massacre with the illusion of movement. 6 hours. It takes 6 hours to cross 5 miles. When the column finally emerges on the other side of Kabul Pass, the sun is setting and 3,000 people are dead or missing. 3,000 out of 16,000 in one afternoon, in 5 miles. The survivors collapse onto open ground, too exhausted to move another step. The temperature drops to 20 below zero. No fires are permitted. Akbar Khan's forces are close, circling in the darkness. A fire would draw an attack. So 13,000 people huddle on frozen ground in the dark, trying not to die before dawn. Brydon dismounts on shaking legs. His pony is bleeding from the graze on its flank, but the wound is shallow. He ties a strip of cloth around it and lets the animal rest. Around him, the wreckage of the column is scattered across the hillside. There's no organization anymore, no formation. Just clusters of people huddled together. Soldiers mixed with camp followers, officers with sepoys. Everyone seeking warmth, seeking shelter that doesn't exist. Brydon walks through the chaos, looking for wounded he can treat. There are too many. He has one medical cart left, the other 2 lost in the pass. His supplies are nearly exhausted. He has bandages, but not enough. He has 1 bottle of laudanum, he has a scalpel and a few needles. That's all. A sepoy from the 35th Bengal Native Infantry is brought to him, carried by 2 of his comrades. The man has been shot through the abdomen. Brydon examines the wound and knows immediately there's nothing he can do. The bullet has torn through the intestines. Without surgery, real surgery, in a hospital with proper instruments and help, the man will die of infection within days. "Can you help him, Dr. Sahib?" one of the sepoys asks. Brydon doses the wounded man with laudanum, enough to dull the pain. "Keep him warm, that's all we can do." The sepoys nod and carry their comrade away to die. Brydon moves on. He finds Lieutenant Sturt, twice wounded, sitting against a rock. Sturt's wife is with him, Lady Florentia Sale's daughter. She's pregnant, wrapped in a thin shawl, shivering violently. Brydon checks Sturt's wounds. The shoulder wound is serious but not immediately fatal. The leg wound is infected. "You need rest," Brydon tells him. Sturt laughs, a dry, bitter sound. "We're marching again at dawn, Doctor. There is no rest." His wife looks at Brydon with desperate eyes. "Will we reach Jalalabad?" Brydon doesn't answer. He can't lie to her. She sees the truth in his silence. He moves on. Near the edge of the camp, he finds Captain Skinner with what's left of the 44th Regiment. They formed a defensive perimeter. Men standing shoulder to shoulder, muskets ready, watching the darkness for attackers. Skinner sees Brydon and nods. "Doctor, still breathing, I see." "For now. How are your men?" Skinner looks at his regiment. 200 men left Kabul this morning. He counts them now. 160. 40 men lost in one day. "We'll hold," Skinner says quietly. "As long as we have ammunition and daylight, we'll hold." Brydon hears what he doesn't say. When the ammunition runs out, when the darkness comes, we'll die. Around the perimeter, the camp followers huddle in family groups. Mothers clutch children, trying to share body heat. Old men sit alone, too weak to move. The cold is merciless. People begin to freeze within the first hour of nightfall. Brydon passes a family, a woman and 3 small children. The youngest, an infant, is silent, too silent. The woman rocks the child, humming softly, but Brydon can see the truth. The infant is dead, has been for hours. The woman either doesn't realize it or can't accept it. He keeps walking. There's nothing he can say that will help. Near the artillery park, the gun crews are trying to protect their 6 mountain guns. They've lost 2 horses already, shot in the pass. The remaining animals are dying of exhaustion and starvation. The crews discuss abandoning the guns. They're heavy, slow, almost useless against enemies on cliff tops. But the guns are all they have, the only artillery support for 13,000 people, so they keep them. At midnight, a commotion rises near the center of the camp. An emissary has arrived from Akbar Khan. The British officers gather around a small forbidden fire to receive him. Brydon stands at the edge of the circle, watching. The emissary delivers his message in Persian. Captain Colin McIntyre translates. Akbar Khan sends his regrets for the unfortunate attack in Kurd Kabul Pass, rogue elements, tribal forces beyond his control. He still wishes the British well, but the column is in danger. More tribes are gathering. To ensure safety, more hostages must be provided. Senior officers, their families, as a guarantee of good faith. The officers argue. Some want to refuse, others say they have no choice. Brigadier Shelton, one of the few senior commanders still with the column, makes the decision. We agree, prepare the hostages. Families are woken in the freezing darkness and told to gather their things. Children cry, women weep. Officers who've served together for years embrace, knowing they'll never see each other again. Lieutenant John Sturt is among those selected. His pregnant wife will go with him into captivity. Sturt sees Brydon and raises a hand in farewell.
Brydon raises his hand in return. Then the hostages are led away into the darkness toward the Afghan lines. The camp settles into silence again. Brydon returns to his pony and sits beside the animal, leaning against its warmth. He pulls out his pistol and checks the chambers in the moonlight. 12 rounds. He's fired none yet. He tucks the pistol back into his coat and pulls off his cap. The papers are still there, letters from home, the medical notes, the sketch of Scotland. He unfolds them carefully, his fingers numb, and reads by moonlight. The words are familiar, comforting, a different world, a different life. He folds them and tucks them back into the cap's lining. Around him, the night is filled with sounds, crying, praying, the low moan of wind across the frozen ground, and underneath it all, quieter, the sound of people dying. A child calling for water that no one has. A sepoy whispering prayers in Hindi, his voice growing weaker. A woman singing a lullaby to a child who will not wake. Brydon doesn't sleep. He sits beside his pony and watches the stars wheel overhead. By dawn, another 150 people have frozen to death. The camp followers suffer the worst. Families who huddled together for warmth are found frozen in circles, locked together by ice, their bodies already stiff. The sepoy battalions lose dozens, men who sat down to rest and never stood again. The British regiments fare slightly better. The 44th maintains discipline, forces men to stay on their feet, to keep moving. But even they lose men to the cold. When dawn breaks, gray and cold and merciless, the survivors rise and prepare to move. 13,500 left Kabul yesterday. 11,000 remain. They've traveled 8 miles, 82 miles to Jalalabad. Brydon mounts his pony. His hands are so cold he can barely grip the reins. Ahead, the road climbs higher into the mountains. More passes, more killing grounds. Behind, the snow is red. Bodies are scattered across the hillside. British soldiers, sepoys, camp followers, women, children. No one buries them. There's no time, no tools. The ground is frozen solid. The column moves east. Day 2 begins. January 7th, 1842. Dawn breaks over the column,
And with it comes the realization that the hostages were taken for nothing. The attacks resume within an hour of sunrise. Afghan cavalry sweeps down from the hills, firing into the flanks of the column. Ghilzai tribesmen harry the rearguard. Snipers on distant ridges pick off officers and soldiers, anyone whose uniform makes them visible. Brydon rides in the middle of what's left of the formation, his pony struggling through snow that's now waist-deep. The road has disappeared entirely. The column moves by instinct, following the low ground between hills, hoping it leads east toward Jalalabad. It doesn't always. Twice during the morning, the advance elements take wrong turns, and the entire column has to backtrack, wasting hours, burning energy no one can spare. Each time they reverse direction, more people collapse in the snow and don't rise. The column is no longer a military formation. It's a refugee stream. 11,000 people stretched across 2 miles of mountainous terrain, held together only by the fact that they're all moving in the same direction. The military units try to maintain some organization. Captain Skinner's companies of the 44th Regiment still march in formation, though their ranks are thinning. The sepoy battalions of the 27th and 35th Bengal Native Infantry keep their organization, NCOs shouting orders in Hindustani, holding men together through discipline and habit. But the cavalry has largely disintegrated. The 5th Light Cavalry, once a mounted unit of professional horsemen, is now mostly on foot. Their horses were eaten in Kabul or shot in yesterday's fighting. The few remaining mounted officers ride animals so weak they can barely walk. And the camp followers, 10,000 civilians, mostly women and children, have no organization at all. They cluster in family groups, extended kin networks, groups from the same village or the same regiment. They follow the soldiers because the soldiers are the only protection they have, but the soldiers can't protect them. By mid-morning, the column reaches a small abandoned village, a cluster of mud brick compounds built into the hillside. The officers call a halt. People collapse where they stand. Brydon dismounts and ties his pony to a wooden post. The animal's head droops, its breathing is labored. He examines the wound from yesterday. The graze on its flank is scabbing over. No sign of infection. He strokes the pony's neck. Just keep going. That's all you have to do. He walks through the village, looking for anything useful. The compounds have been stripped. No food, no firewood, nothing of value. The inhabitants fled before the British arrived, taking everything with them. In one building, he finds a group of camp followers huddled around a dying fire made from scraps of furniture. They're burning pieces of a door, watching the flames with desperate eyes. An old woman sees Brydon and gestures to the fire. "Sit, Dr. Sahib, warm yourself." He sits for a moment, holding his hands to the flames. The heat is minimal, but it's something. "How far to Jalalabad?" the woman asks. 80 miles, maybe less." "We will make it?" Brydon looks at her bare feet, her thin shawl, her hollow eyes. She's starving, freezing, and she's asking him for hope. "Stay close to the soldiers," he tells her. "Don't fall behind." It's not an answer, but it's all he has. Outside, the situation is getting worse rapidly. Afghan riders appear on the surrounding hills, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They don't attack immediately. They just watch, circling the village, waiting. Brigadier Shelton orders the military units to form a defensive perimeter. The 44th Regiment deploys along the eastern side of the village. The sepoy battalions take the south and west. The cavalry, those few still mounted, position themselves to respond to any breach. The artillery crews unlimber their remaining mountain guns. They've already lost 2 of the original 6, abandoned yesterday when the horses pulling them were shot. 4 guns remain. The crews position them to cover the approaches. An hour into the halt, an emissary rides down from the hills under a white flag. The British officers gather to receive him. Brydon watches from a distance as Captain Colin Mackenzie translates the message from Persian. Akbar Khan offers new terms. The column is moving too slowly. Winter storms are coming. More tribal forces are gathering beyond his control. For the safety of the British, he suggests that the column leave behind the camp followers. The fighting men, the soldiers, the officers can proceed to Jalalabad quickly, unencumbered. The camp followers will be protected, fed, and sent to Jalalabad later when the weather improves. Silence follows the translation. Every officer understands what this means. Protected means enslaved. The women will be sold. The children will be taken. The elderly will be killed. There will be no later. Shelton's face hardens. Tell him we refuse. The column stays together. The emissary nods, shows no emotion, and rides back to the hills. Within minutes, the attacks resume. This time, the Afghans don't hold back. Cavalry charges from 3 directions simultaneously. Gunfire rakes the village from the surrounding ridges. Hundreds of tribesmen rush down the slopes, firing jaziles, swinging swords. The British try to hold the perimeter. The 44th Regiment fires controlled volleys, their discipline holding despite the chaos. Captain Skinner moves among his men, keeping them steady. First rank, fire. Second rank, ready. The volleys crash out. Afghans fall, but more keep coming. The sepoy battalions fight with the same professional discipline. The men of the 27th Bengal Native Infantry hold their section of the perimeter, firing, reloading, firing again. But ammunition is running low. Officers shout at men to make every shot count. The artillery fires case shot into the charging cavalry. The 9-pounder mountain guns are small, but at close range they're devastating. One blast of case shot, essentially a large shotgun shell, cuts down a dozen riders. But the guns are slow to reload. Between shots, the Afghans advance. A group of tribesmen breaks through the perimeter on the south side. Hand-to-hand fighting erupts. Sepoys meet them with bayonets. Steel on steel, men shouting, dying. Brydon crouches behind a wall, his pistol drawn. He doesn't fire, he's saving his rounds. An Afghan rushes toward him, sword raised. Brydon aims, fires. The man goes down. 11 rounds left. The fighting lasts 2 hours. The British hold the village, but the cost is staggering. 200 dead, 300 wounded. Ammunition expended at an alarming rate. The men of the 44th are down to 10 rounds per man. The sepoy battalions have less.
And the wounded keep coming to Brydon. He sets up a makeshift aid station in one of the compounds. Wounded men are carried to him. British soldiers, sepoys, cavalry troopers. He does what he can with almost nothing. A soldier from the 44th with a sword cut across his forearm. Brydon cleans it with snow, stitches it closed with the last of his surgical thread. A sepoy from the 35th with a bullet through his thigh. The bone is shattered. Without proper surgery, the man will lose the leg. Without amputation, he'll die of gangrene. Brydon doses him with laudanum and moves on. There's nothing else he can do. An officer of the 5th Cavalry with multiple wounds, sword cuts, a bullet graze. Brydon bandages what he can. The officer is pale, going into shock. "Will I make it to Jalalabad, doctor?" "If you can ride." "I can ride." The officer dies an hour later. By the time the Afghans pull back, Brydon's last bottle of laudanum is half empty. His bandages are running out. His surgical instruments are lost. The cart carrying them was destroyed in the fighting. He has a scalpel,
A few needles, some strips of cloth. That's all. When the order comes to move out, half the wounded can't walk. They're left behind. The British have no stretchers, no carts to spare. Men who can't march under their own tower cannot come. Brydon watches soldiers, men he treated, men he tried to save, left sitting against compound walls as the column moves past them. The Afghans will find them within hours. The column staggers out of the village and back onto the road. Brydon remounts his pony. His hands shake, not from cold, from exhaustion and the weight of knowing this will happen again tomorrow. He looks back at the village one last time. The wounded British and Indian soldiers sit in the snow, watching the column leave. Some wave, others just stare. Brydon turns forward and doesn't look back again. The road climbs higher into the mountains. The air grows thinner. Breathing becomes a struggle. The snow deepens to chest height in places. Men wade through it, lifting their knees high with each step, gasping, falling, rising, falling again. Some don't rise. By nightfall on January 7th, they've covered 5 miles. Another 1,000 people are dead. 9,000 remain. The second night is worse than the first. The column camps on a barren hillside with no shelter, no firewood, no water except what can be melted from snow. The temperature drops to 30 below zero. Brydon doesn't try to sleep. He walks through the camp because moving is the only thing that keeps him warm. The camp followers are dying in clusters. He finds families frozen together, mothers holding children, husbands sheltering wives. By morning, they'll be ice sculptures. The sepoy battalions huddle in tight groups, standing rather than sitting, because sitting means you won't rise again. The men stand shoulder to shoulder, sharing body heat, keeping each other alive through closeness and will. The 44th Regiment maintains its discipline even here. Captain Skinner has his men form into groups of 10. Each group pressed together for warmth. Officers walk through the night, checking on their men, making sure no one falls asleep and freezes. Brydon finds Brigadier Shelton near the artillery park. Shelton is one of the few senior officers still with the column. General Elphinstone was taken as a hostage yesterday. Major Pottinger went with him. The command structure is a skeleton. Shelton is staring at the 4 remaining mountain guns. The crews sit nearby, exhausted. "We should abandon them," Shelton says without looking at Brydon. "The guns slow us down. The horses are dying." "They're the only artillery we have." "They're useless against enemies on cliff tops, and we're running out of ammunition." Brydon doesn't argue. Shelton is right. But the guns are a symbol, the last piece of British military power. To abandon them is to admit they're not an army anymore, just refugees running for their lives. Near midnight, another emissary arrives from Akbar Khan. This time, the demand is explicit. Brigadier Shelton and the remaining senior officers must surrender themselves as hostages. In return, the column will be given safe passage for the remainder of the journey. Supplies will be provided. Guides will be sent. The officers who remain, mostly captains and lieutenants now, gather to discuss. "It's another lie," someone says. "He's taken hostages twice. Nothing has changed." "What choice do we have?" someone else replies. "We've lost a third of the column in 2 days. If this continues, we'll all be dead before we reach Jalalabad." The debate is brief. Everyone is too cold, too exhausted for long arguments. Shelton makes the decision himself. "I'll go. Perhaps my presence will buy time for the rest of you." No one believes him, but no one argues. The hostages are gathered. Shelton, 3 captains, 2 lieutenants. No families this time. The wives and children were taken yesterday. Captain Skinner comes to say goodbye to one of the departing officers, a friend from the 44th. They shake hands. "Take care of the regiment," the departing captain says. "I will." They both know it's a lie. There won't be a regiment to take care of in 3 days. The hostages are led away into the darkness. The column is now commanded by captains and lieutenants. The highest-ranking officer remaining is Captain James Bellew of the Bengal Cavalry. He's 28 years old and in command of 9,000 people. He has no idea what to do. Brydon returns to his pony and sits in the snow beside it. He pulls out his pistol and checks it in the moonlight. 11 rounds. He's fired 1. He tucks the pistol away and pulls off his cap. The papers are still there. He unfolds them. Letters from Scotland, from his sister. The ink is smudged from moisture. Some words are illegible now. He reads what he can, then folds them carefully and puts them back. The night drags on. By dawn, 1,500 more people have frozen to death. The toll is staggering. In one night, 1,500 people. Soldiers, sepoys, women, children, who sat down in the snow and never stood up. The survivors rise stiffly, like old men, and prepare to move. 7,500 remain out of the 16,500 who left Kabul. They've traveled 13 miles, 77 miles to Jalalabad. January 8, 1842. The 3rd day begins with disaster. The column enters another narrow pass, Tundi Tariki, even steeper and more treacherous than Khurd Kabul. The road is little more than a goat track winding between rock walls and over frozen streams. The Afghans are waiting. They've blocked the far end of the pass with felled trees and boulders. When the column enters, they attack from all sides, front, rear, both flanks, simultaneously. The cavalry tries to charge the barricade. The few remaining mounted officers spur their dying horses forward. They're met with concentrated Jezile fire. Horses and riders go down together. Captain Thomas Souter of the 44th Regiment, one of the few officers still on horseback, is shot from his saddle. He survives the fall, bloodied but alive. The infantry tries to form defensive squares, the classic British response to cavalry attacks. But Afghan tribesmen aren't cavalry, they're skirmishers, fighters who rush in, fire, withdraw, attack from a different angle. The sepoy battalions, their numbers decimated, try to hold formation. The men of the 27th Bengal Native Infantry form a line across the narrow pass, blocking the rear, buying time for the camp followers to escape forward. They're overwhelmed within minutes. Afghan swordsmen rush the line. The sepoys meet them with bayonets. Hand-to-hand fighting erupts. Men kill and are killed in the space of heartbeats. The line breaks. The survivors retreat, fighting step by step, leaving their dead behind. Brydon is caught in the chaos. His pony rears as gunfire erupts around him. He holds on, controls the animal, gets it moving forward. A bullet whizzes past his head. Another strikes the ground beside him, kicking up snow and ice. He dismounts, leads the pony on foot. Safer to be lower, harder to hit. Around him, the column is disintegrating. The neat separation between military units and camp followers has collapsed entirely. Soldiers and civilians are mixed together, everyone running, everyone trying to reach the far end of the pass. Brydon sees Captain Skinner ahead, still commanding the rear elements of the 44th. The regiment has shrunk to fewer than 100 men, but they're still fighting, still organized. "Form on me," Skinner shouts. "Square formation." The remaining men of the 44th form a defensive square, a hollow formation, men facing outward in all directions, bayonets bristling like a hedgehog. The camp followers crowd into the center of the square, protected by the soldiers around them. The square fights its way forward, step by step. Afghan tribesmen charge it from multiple directions. The 44th fires volleys, drops attackers, then meets the rest with bayonets when ammunition runs out. Skinner is in the center of the square, shouting encouragement, directing fire. He's been wounded, a cut across his forehead, blood streaming into his eyes, but he doesn't fall. "Steady, men, we've been in worse." It's a lie. They haven't been in worse, but it's a good lie, and the men believe it. The square holds for 2 hours, fighting through the pass. Every yard costs lives. Men fall. The square contracts, tightens, keeps moving. Brydon goes with them. He's inside the square now, his pony beside him, surrounded by wounded men and terrified civilians. An Afghan tribesman breaks through the line, slashing with a sword. Brydon raises his pistol and fires. The man goes down. 10 rounds left. The fighting continues. The noise is overwhelming. Gunfire, screams, the clash of steel on steel, the thunder of rocks being thrown from the cliffs above. Finally, after what feels like hours, the barricade at the far end of the pass is cleared. The column, what's left of it, pushes through. The survivors collapse onto open ground. Brydon looks around, counting. The 44th Regiment is down to 60 men, 60 out of the 200 who started. The sepoy battalions are shattered. The 27th Bengal Native Infantry, which started with 400 men, has 40. The camp followers, he can't even estimate. Thousands are missing, dead in the pass, scattered in the hills, captured. He sits down in the snow and stares at nothing. Captain Skinner sits down nearby. His forehead wound has stopped bleeding, crusted over with frozen blood. "How many left in your regiment?" Brydon asks. 60, maybe less. Officers? 6. We started with 12. They sit in silence for a moment. "We're not going to make it, are we?" Skinner says quietly. "No." Skinner nods. "Thought so." That night, the third night, the temperature drops to 40 below zero. People freeze where they sit. No energy left to huddle together, no warmth left to share. They just close their eyes and don't open them again. By dawn on January 9th, fewer than 5,000 people remain. 5,000 out of 16,000 in 3 days. The column rises and continues east. Brydon mounts his pony. The animal is dying, ribs showing, head hanging, legs trembling, but it's still moving. "Just a bit more," Brydon whispers. "We're halfway." 45 miles to Jalalabad. 45 more passes, more killing grounds, more frozen nights. He looks at the survivors around him, the hollow-eyed soldiers, the skeletal camp followers, the handful of officers trying to maintain command over chaos. They're all dead. They just don't know it yet. The column moves east. Day 4 begins. January 9th, 1842. There is no column anymore. What remains is a ragged stream of broken people stumbling through snow, spread across 3 miles of mountainous terrain, held together by nothing except the fact that they're all moving in the same direction, east, toward Jalalabad, toward a destination most of them will never reach. Brydon rides near what used to be the middle of the formation. Now it's just a loose scatter of survivors, soldiers from shattered regiments, sepoys whose battalions no longer exist, camp followers who've lost their families, all walking in silence. No one gives orders, no one takes them. The command structure died with the hostages. The attacks have changed in character. The Afghans no longer need coordinated assaults. They simply pick off stragglers one by one, like wolves culling a dying herd. A mounted tribesman rides down from a ridge, fires a jazal into a group of camp followers walking together, and gallops away before anyone can react. 3 people fall. The rest keep walking, too exhausted to even look back. Brydon sees this and keeps riding. There's nothing he can do. His medical supplies are gone, his energy is gone. All he has left is forward motion. The landscape is brutally beautiful, snow-covered peaks rising into a pale sky, valleys stretching endlessly between mountain ranges. The kind of terrain that would inspire awe under different circumstances. Now it just kills. The road, what's left of it, winds through a series of low hills. In places, the snow is so deep people have to wade through chest-high drifts. Men vanish into them and don't emerge. No one digs them out. By mid-morning, Brydon encounters what means of the 44th Regiment of Foot. There are 50 men left. 50 out of the 200 who marched out of Kabul 4 days ago. Captain James Skinner is still alive, still on his feet, though he looks more corpse than man. His uniform is in tatters, his face is black with frostbite. Blood has frozen in his beard from the head wound he took yesterday, but his eyes are still sharp, still focused. He sees Brydon and raises a hand in greeting. Brydon rides over and dismounts. "Captain." "Doctor." Skinner's voice is hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Still breathing, I see." "For now." Skinner looks at his men. 50 soldiers standing in a loose group, muskets held like walking sticks. They're the rear guard, or what's left of it, the last organized military unit in the column. "How much ammunition?" Brydon asks. 3 rounds per man. After that, it's bayonets and prayers. Brydon nods. He doesn't mention his pistol. 10 rounds left. He fired 2. 1 yesterday in the village, 1 in Tungi Tariki Pass. "How far to Jalalabad?" Skinner asks. 40 miles, maybe less. Skinner laughs, a short, bitter bark. Might as well be 1,000. They stand in silence for a moment, watching the stream of survivors shuffle past. Old men stumbling, women carrying children who may already be dead. Sepoys from dissolved battalions walking alone. "I'm pushing ahead," Brydon says quietly. "Tonight or tomorrow. Small group, mounted if possible, moving fast. It's the only chance." Skinner nods slowly. "Smart, you should take it." "Come with me." "Can't. The lads need me." He gestures at his 50 soldiers. What's left of them? "They're dying already." "I know, but I'm not leaving them to die alone." Skinner extends a hand. "Good luck, doctor." Brydon shakes it. The captain's hand is cold, the skin rough with frostbite. "Good luck, Captain." Brydon mounts and rides away. He doesn't look back. An hour later, the Afghans attack again. This time it's a cavalry charge. Perhaps 100 riders sweeping down from the northern ridge. They hit the rear of the column, where Skinner and his 50 men are walking. Brydon hears the gunfire, distant and sharp. He turns in his saddle and watches. The 44th forms a line, their last defensive formation. They fire a volley. Afghans go down. The riders keep coming. Another volley. More fall. Then the cavalry crashes into the line. Brydon can see flashes of steel, men falling, horses trampling bodies. The fight lasts perhaps 10 minutes. When the Afghan riders pull back, the 44th Regiment of Foot ceases to exist. 50 men gone. Captain James Skinner is dead. Her Majesty's 44th, the only British infantry regiment in the garrison, has been destroyed. The column doesn't stop, doesn't even slow. People keep walking east. Brydon turns forward and rides on. By afternoon, he encounters a group of British cavalry officers, 6 men, still mounted, their horses barely alive but moving faster than the main body of survivors. He recognizes one of them, Captain Thomas Souter of the 44th, who was shot from his horse yesterday but survived. Souter has gotten another mount somehow, a skeletal Afghan pony that looks ready to collapse. "Dr. Brydon," Souter calls out, "where are you headed?" "East, same as everyone." "We're making a run for it tonight, fast as we can. The horses won't last another day with the column. Better to ride hard and hope we get through." Brydon looks at the other 5 officers, all mounted, all relatively mobile compared to the thousands walking. "Just the 6 of you?" "Maybe a few others if they can keep up. You should come. Your pony looks stronger than most." Brydon looks back at the column, the stragglers, the wounded, the camp followers stumbling through the snow. 4,000 people, maybe less, dying by degrees. He thinks about the oath he took as a surgeon. First, do no harm. His place is with the wounded, with the sick, with those who need him. But there's nothing he can do for them. No medicine, no supplies, no hope. "I'll come," he says. Souter nods. "Good. We leave at dusk. Stay close." The group continues east, moving faster than the main body, pulling ahead. They pass through what used to be the front of the column, now just scattered groups of people too exhausted to maintain any formation. A British private from some dissolved unit approaches Brydon, staggering, his hands held out. "Doctor, please, water. Do you have water?" Brydon has half a flask. He hands it over.
The private drinks it all, hands back the empty flask, and walks away without a word. Brydon lets him go. By late afternoon, the group of mounted officers has grown to 12. All British or Anglo-Indian cavalry, all on horseback, all ready to abandon what's left of the column. No one speaks the plan aloud, but everyone understands. At dusk, they're going to ride hard for Jalalabad, 40 miles. 1 night and 1 day if the horses hold. Leave behind anyone who can't keep up. It's ruthless. It's necessary. It's the only way any of them survive. Brydon checks his pony. The animal is weak, underfed, bleeding from multiple minor wounds, but it's still standing, still breathing. "One more night," he whispers to it. "Just one more night." The pony's ears flick toward his voice, but it doesn't raise its head. As the sun sets on January 9th, the temperature plummets. The sky is clear, no clouds, no snow, just stars beginning to emerge against the deepening blue, beautiful and lethal. The group of mounted officers gathers on a low rise away from the main body of survivors. 12 men on dying horses, preparing to make a run for Jalalabad. Captain Souter addresses them quietly. "We ride in single file, no talking, no fires. We move through the night. If your horse goes down, you're on your own. We don't stop for anything. Understood?" Everyone nods. Brydon tightens the straps on his medical kit, nearly empty now, just a scalpel and some strips of cloth. He checks his pistol, 10 rounds. He looks back at the column one last time. 4,000 people huddled on the frozen ground, scattered across a mile of hillside. No fires, no shelter, just people dying in the darkness. He thinks about the oath he took, about the patients he's leaving behind, about the wounded who need him. Then he thinks about the 16,000 who left Kabul, about the 12,000 already dead, about the futility of dying with them when there's a chance, however slim, of survival. He turns his back on the column and faces east. The group rides out at dusk, moving in silence. For the first few hours, the night is quiet. They follow a narrow valley, staying low, avoiding the ridges where Afghan patrols might spot them. The horses move slowly, carefully, their hooves crunching in the snow. Brydon rides near the middle of the line. Ahead of him, Captain Souter leads. Behind him, 3 more officers whose names he doesn't know. The cold is so intense his face goes numb.
He can't feel his hands on the reins. He steers the pony by pressure from his knees. After 2 hours, Souter calls a brief halt. The officers dismount to rest the horses. No one speaks. They stand in a tight cluster, sharing body heat, waiting. Brydon checks his pony. Its breathing is labored, its legs trembling. He doesn't know if it can make the distance. 40 miles, still 40 miles to go. They remount and continue. The night stretches on. Time loses meaning. There's only the rhythm of the horse beneath him, the crunch of snow, the distant howl of wind through the peaks. At some point, Brydon realizes one of the riders is missing. He counts heads. 11. Someone fell behind. No one noticed. No one goes back to look. They ride on. Near midnight, they encounter an Afghan patrol, 6 riders moving along a parallel ridge. The two groups see each other simultaneously. For a moment, no one moves. Then the Afghans raise their jezails. "Ride," Souter shouts. The officers spur their horses into a gallop. Gunfire cracks behind them. A bullet whizzes past Brydon's head. Another strikes the ground beside his pony, kicking up snow. They ride hard for 10 minutes, the horses gasping, foam flying from their mouths. When they finally slow, the Afghans are gone, but so is another officer. His horse runs beside them, riderless. The man is gone, shot from the saddle. 10 officers remain. They continue through the night, the horses dying beneath them, step by step. At dawn on January 10th, one of the horses collapses. Its rider, a lieutenant from the 5th Cavalry, tries to get it to stand. The horse doesn't move. "Leave it," Souter says. "I can get it up." "Leave it. Take your saddle and walk." The lieutenant stares at his horse for a long moment, then draws his pistol and shoots the animal through the head. The crack echoes across the valley. He takes his saddle and starts walking. The rest ride on. Within 2 hours, the lieutenant has fallen behind. He doesn't call out for them to wait. He knows they won't.
9 officers left. The terrain changes. The mountains give way to lower hills. The snow thins. For the first time in days, Brydon can see the road clearly. A dirt track winding through rocky ground. They're getting close. He can feel it. Then ahead, a large force of Afghan cavalry appears, blocking the road. 200 riders, maybe more. Souter reins in. The officers cluster together. "How many?" someone asks quietly. "Too many. We can't fight through." "Can we go around?" Souter scans the terrain. The road runs through a narrow valley. To either side, the ground is too rough for horses. "We go back, find another route." They turn and ride west, away from Jalalabad, away from safety. The frustration is overwhelming. They've ridden all night. They're so close, and now they have to backtrack. By mid-morning, they've lost the road entirely. They're moving by instinct, following valleys, hoping they lead east. Another horse collapses, another officer left behind. 8. By noon on January 10th, they stumble onto a small village, abandoned, half buried in snow. They take shelter in one of the compounds, barricading the door with furniture. The horses are kept inside with them. The animals stand with their heads down, too exhausted to even drink when offered snow. Brydon sits against a wall and closes his eyes. Around him, the other officers do the same. No one speaks. An hour later, gunfire erupts outside. The Afghans have found them. The officers rush to the windows and return fire through gaps in the mud brick. The fight is brief. The Afghans probe the defenses, find them solid, and pull back. But now the British are trapped. They wait until nightfall, then slip out through a gap in the back wall. They lead their horses on foot through the darkness, moving as quietly as possible. By midnight, they're clear of the village and back on something resembling a road. 7 officers remain. Brydon's pony is barely moving. Its head hangs low. Its steps are unsteady. He knows it won't last another day, but he needs one more day. Just one. They ride through the night of January 10th, moving slowly now, the horses stumbling over rocks they can't see in the darkness. Somewhere ahead is Jalalabad. Somewhere behind is what's left of the column. Maybe 2,000 people, scattered across the mountains, freezing, dying, waiting for the end. Brydon doesn't look back. While Brydon and the other officers ride toward Jalalabad, the main body of the column dies. January 10, 1842. Fewer than 2,000 people remain. The last survivors of the 16,500 who left Kabul 5 days ago. They're scattered across miles of frozen terrain. No longer a column, just isolated groups of people too exhausted to go on. The military units have ceased to exist. The 44th Regiment is gone, destroyed yesterday. The sepoy battalions are dissolved, their men dead or scattered. The cavalry has no horses. The artillery abandoned its last 2 guns when the crews died. What remains are individuals. A few British soldiers walking alone. Small groups of sepoys trying to stay together. Camp followers, mostly women and children, huddled in family clusters, hoping for protection that no longer exists. The Afghans don't even bother with organized attacks anymore. They just ride through the scattered survivors, killing at will, taking prisoners, looting the dead. By midday on January 10th, the largest remaining group, perhaps 200 people, gathers in a small valley. Among them are the last British officers still with the column. Captain John Bygrave of the Shah's forces, Lieutenant Henry Harding of the 5th Cavalry, and a handful of junior officers. They're surrounded by camp followers, women, children, servants, the unarmed civilians who depended on soldiers who can no longer protect them. An Afghan emissary approaches under a flag of truce. The message is simple. Surrender now and you will be spared. Resist and everyone dies. The officers discuss it briefly. They have no ammunition left, no food, no hope of reaching Jalalabad. They surrender. The 200 people are taken into captivity. Most of the camp followers will be sold as slaves. Some of the officers will be held as hostages, eventually ransomed. Many will die in captivity. But they're the lucky ones. They survive the next hour. The rest of the column, another 1,000 people scattered across the mountains, are hunted down over the following days. Some freeze to death, some are killed by tribesmen.
Some simply sit down in the snow and don't stand up again. By January 11th, the column has ceased to exist. Of the 16,500 who left Kabul, only a handful remained free. A few small groups of soldiers who managed to avoid capture. A few individuals who hid in caves or ravines and survived by sheer luck. And 7 mounted officers riding hard for Jalalabad. Brydon and the 6 other officers ride through the dawn of January 11th, exhausted beyond measure but still moving. They're close now. They can feel it. The terrain has changed. The mountains giving way to rolling hills, then to more level ground. Jalalabad must be near, 20 miles, maybe less. But the horses are dying. Captain Souter's mount collapses mid-morning. The animal simply stops walking, stands still for a moment, then falls over sideways. Souter dismounts before it falls. He looks at the horse, dead, its ribs showing, its eyes glazed, and then at the other officers. "Go," he says, "I'll walk." "We can double up." "The horses can't carry 2. Go, I'll follow the road." The 6 remaining mounted officers look at each other. They all know Souter won't make it on foot, not in this cold, not with Afghan patrols everywhere. But they also know their horses won't survive carrying double riders. "Good luck, Captain," one of them says. They ride on. Souter stands alone in the snow, watching them go. Then he starts walking east. 6 officers remain. By noon, they can see the fortress of Jalalabad in the distance, a dark shape on the horizon, maybe 15 miles away, so close. Then ahead, another Afghan force appears, not blocking the road this time, but ranging across their path, hunting. The officers scatter. They break in different directions, each man making his own run for safety. The Afghans give chase, splitting up to pursue different targets. Brydon spurs his pony into what might be its final gallop. The animal responds, finding some last reserve of strength, some final instinct to survive. He rides low over its neck, urging it forward. Behind him he hears gunfire. Doesn't know if they're shooting at him or at the others. He doesn't look back. The chase lasts 20 minutes. Then the pursuit breaks off. The Afghans turn back, having killed or captured easier targets. Brydon slows his pony to a walk. He's alone now. He looks back across the empty plain. No other riders visible, no movement, just wind and snow and silence. He's the last one. He faces forward, toward Jalalabad, toward the fortress. He can see it clearly now in the distance, 12 miles away. His pony is trembling beneath him, dying by degrees. "Just a bit more," Brydon whispers. "We're almost there." The pony's ears flick, but it doesn't raise its head. They continue east. Behind them, the last remnants of the army of the Indus are scattered across 90 miles of frozen mountains. Ahead, Jalalabad waits, a British fortress that will soon learn the magnitude of the disaster. Brydon rides alone through the afternoon of January 11th. 16,500 left Kabul. One man is still riding. Brydon rides alone. The morning of January 12th breaks cold and clear. The sun rises over the Hindu Kush, painting the snow-covered peaks gold and red. Beautiful, merciless. He's been riding through the night, alone since the other officers scattered yesterday. He doesn't know what happened to them. Captured, probably. Killed. He heard gunfire after they split up, but he didn't look back. He couldn't look back. His pony walks slowly, each step deliberate, measured. The animal is dying. Brydon can feel it in the way it moves, the trembling legs, the labored breathing, the way its head hangs so low its nose nearly touches the snow. But it's still moving, still putting one hoof in front of the other. "Just a bit more," Brydon whispers. "We're almost there." Jalalabad is visible on the horizon, a dark smudge against the pale landscape, maybe 10 miles away. Stone walls, watchtowers, British flags. Safety, if he can reach it. The plain between him and the fortress is open, exposed, no cover, no concealment. He rides in silence, his body moving with the pony's rhythm, his mind somewhere between alertness and exhaustion. He hasn't slept in 2 days, hasn't eaten in 3. His water flask is empty, his lips are cracked and bleeding, but he's alive. 16,500 people left Kabul. He's alive, and they're dead, and he doesn't know why. Luck, a sheaf of papers, a tough pony. A pistol with 10 rounds, and choices. 1,000 small choices that meant life for him and death for someone else. He pushes the thoughts away. There will be time for guilt later, if he survives. The morning passes slowly. The pony plods forward. Jalalabad grows larger on the horizon. 8 miles. 7. Then he sees movement behind him. He turns in the saddle, and his heart sinks. 3 riders, Afghan cavalry, coming fast. They're half a mile back, but closing. Brydon leans forward, spurs his pony gently. "Come on, just a bit faster." The pony responds, breaking into a trot. Its breathing becomes ragged, desperate, but it runs. The Afghan riders close the distance. They're on fresh horses, well-fed, strong. Brydon's pony is a skeleton held together by will and instinct. 400 yards, 300. Brydon draws his pistol, 10 rounds. He checks behind him, judges the distance. Not yet, too far. The riders are shouting to each other in Pashto, coordinating. One veers left, another right. They're trying to box him in. 200 yards. Brydon turns in the saddle, aims at the nearest rider, fires, miss. 9 rounds left. The rider doesn't slow, returns fire with a Giselle. The bullet goes wide. Brydon faces forward, spurs his pony harder. The animal is gasping now, foam flying from its mouth. It can't maintain this pace. The rider's close to 100 yards. Brydon turns again, aims more carefully, fires. The lead rider's horse stumbles and goes down. The rider is thrown, tumbling in the snow. 8 rounds left. The other 2 riders slow, give themselves more distance. They're being cautious now. Brydon faces forward. Jalalabad is 5 miles away. He can see the walls clearly, can see the watchtowers. Too far, still too far. The 2 remaining Afghan riders split up, approaching from both sides. They're professionals, experienced fighters. They're not going to rush him and give him easy shots. They're going to wear him down, wait for his pony to collapse, then take him. Brydon's pony is stumbling now, its legs barely responding. It's running on nothing but terror and instinct. "Just a bit more," Brydon gasps. "Please, just a bit more." The rider's close again, 100 yards, 75. Then they charge, both simultaneously, coming from opposite sides. Brydon turns right, fires at the nearest rider. The bullet takes the man in the shoulder. He jerks but doesn't fall. 7 rounds left. The wounded rider veers away, but the other keeps coming, closing to 30 yards, 20, his sword raised. Brydon turns to face him, aims the pistol. The Afghan is too close, too fast. The sword swings toward Brydon's head. He ducks. The blade cuts through the air where his skull was a heartbeat before. But the tip of the sword catches his military cap, tears through it, cuts across his scalp. The impact is tremendous. Brydon's head snaps to the side. Blood sprays. Pain explodes through his skull. But he doesn't fall from the saddle. The papers, the letters from Scotland, the medical notes, the sketch of his family home, folded into the lining of his cap, layered thick. The sword cut through the cloth, through the papers, across his scalp. But the papers absorbed most of the force. Instead of splitting his skull, the blade gave him a deep cut, painful, bleeding, but not fatal. Brydon sways in the saddle, his vision blurring. Blood pours down his face, into his eyes. He can't see. He fires his pistol blindly in the direction of the Afghan rider. 6 rounds left. He hears the rider shout something, hears hoofbeats retreating. When he wipes the blood from his eyes, the Afghans are withdrawing, both of them. The wounded one, and the one who struck him. They're not pursuing anymore. Brydon doesn't know why. Maybe they think he's dead. Maybe they've decided he's not worth the effort. Maybe they're out of ammunition. He doesn't care. He faces forward, blood streaming down his face, and keeps riding. His pony is barely walking now, each step slower than the last. Jalalabad is 4 miles away. The pony collapses at noon, 1 mile from Jalalabad. Brydon feels it happening. The animal's legs buckle, its knees hit the ground, then its whole body tips sideways. He barely gets his leg out from under it before it falls. The pony lies on its side in the snow. It's breathing fast and shallow. Its eyes roll toward Brydon, dark and liquid. Brydon kneels beside it, strokes its neck with a shaking hand. "You did it," he whispers. "You got me here."
The pony's breathing slows, then stops. Brydon stays kneeling for a moment, his hand on the dead animal's neck. 90 miles. This pony carried him 90 miles through the worst 7 days of his life. Through passes and battles and frozen nights. It carried him when he had no right to ask it to keep going. And now it's dead, a mile from safety. Brydon stands slowly. His head throbs where the sword struck him. Blood has soaked his coat, his uniform, dried and frozen in his beard. He reaches up and touches his cap. Torn open. The papers inside shredded and blood-soaked. The papers that saved his life. He pulls them out carefully. Letters from his sister, medical notes, a sketch of home. All of them cut by the sword blade, soaked in his blood, barely legible. He folds them carefully and tucks them back into the torn cap. Then he starts walking. 1 mile. 1 mile to Jalalabad. His legs barely respond. He's walked and ridden for 7 days with almost no food, no water, no sleep. His body is running on nothing, but he walks. The fortress grows larger with each step. He can see details now, the individual stones in the walls, the cannons on the ramparts. He's going to make it, after everything. After 16,000 people dead, after 7 days in hell, he's going to make it. Halfway across that final mile, his legs give out. He falls face first into the snow. He lies there for a moment, breathing hard, tasting blood. Then he pushes himself up, gets his hands under him, gets one knee forward, then the other. He stands, and he walks. Quarter mile from the fortress, a shout goes up from the walls. "Rider approaching!" Not a rider, a man on foot, but someone has seen him. The gates begin to open. Brydon keeps walking, 1 foot in front of the other. Don't stop, don't fall again, just keep moving. Soldiers run out from the gates, British infantry running toward him across the snow. They reach him. Hands grab his arms, holding him upright. "Where's the column?" someone asks. "Where are the troops?" Brydon tries to answer. His voice comes out as a croak. He hasn't spoken to another human being in 2 days. "Gone," he manages. "All gone." They half carry, half walk him through the gates. General Sir Robert Sale is waiting inside the gates. Sale is a hard man, a fighter. His face weathered by decades of campaigning. He commanded the garrison at Jalalabad for months, isolated, under siege, waiting for relief from Kabul that never came. Now relief has arrived. 1 man, on foot, covered in blood. Sale kneels beside Brydon as soldiers lower him to the ground. "Dr. Brydon," Sale says, recognizing him. "Where is the column? Where is General Elphinstone?" Brydon looks up at him. Blood drips from his face onto the snow. "I am the column." Sale's face goes pale. "What?" 16,000 left Kabul. I'm what's left." The words hang in the air. Silence spreads across the compound. Soldiers who were crowding around to hear news step back, stunned. "The others?" Sale asks quietly. "Where are the troops, the regiments, the civilians?" Brydon closes his eyes. "Dead.
frozen in the passes, killed by Akbar Khan's forces, captured. General Elphinstone taken hostage days ago. The 44th Regiment destroyed. Captain Skinner is dead. The Sepoy battalions gone. The camp followers, the women, the children. Brydon closes his eyes. Gone. Sale stands slowly, his hands trembling. He looks past Brydon, toward the mountains to the west, toward the passes, as if expecting to see the column appear over the horizon. Nothing, just empty ground and distant peaks. He looks back at Brydon. How many might still be coming, stragglers, others who fell behind? Brydon opens his eyes. Maybe a few. The hostages, if Akbar Khan keeps them alive. Some soldiers who hid. But the column is gone. A surgeon arrives and begins examining Brydon's head wound. The gash across his scalp is deep, bone visible beneath. The surgeon cleans it, begins stitching. Brydon doesn't make a sound. "You're lucky," the surgeon says. "Another inch and this would have split your skull." Brydon reaches up, touches his torn cap, the shredded papers inside. It was the papers, letters from home. I folded them into the cap lining. The surgeon examines the cap, pulls out the blood-soaked papers. They're cut nearly in half by the sword stroke. "These saved your life." "I know." Brydon is carried to the medical quarters. They lay him on a cot, the first bed he slept in since leaving Kabul. The surgeon finishes stitching his wound, wraps it in clean bandages. "You need rest, doctor, and food. When did you last eat?" Brydon thinks, 3 days ago, maybe 4, I don't remember. They bring him water, which he drinks slowly, then thin soup, which he can barely keep down. Around him, the garrison is in chaos. Officers run from building to building, demanding information. Dispatch riders are sent out to search for other survivors. The garrison is mobilized, preparations made for a relief column. But Brydon knows the truth. There's no one left to relieve. General Sale returns to the medical quarters an hour later. He sits beside Brydon's cot. "Tell me what happened, from the beginning." So Brydon tells him. The cantonment, MacNaughton's murder, the decision to trust Akbar Khan, the departure, the sniping through Kabul's outskirts, Kurd Kabul Pass, 3,000 dead in one afternoon, the hostages taken, the frozen nights, Tungi Tariki, the final dissolution of the column. He tells it without emotion, without inflection, just facts, numbers, events. When he finishes, Sale is silent for a long time. 16,000, Sale says finally, the largest British force in Afghanistan, gone. "Yes, sir." "And you're the only one who made it through?" "So far. There might be others, the hostages, a few soldiers. But out of the 16,000, yes, I'm the only one." Sale stands and walks to the window. He stares out at the mountains. When word reaches London, there will be inquiries, investigations. Someone will be held accountable. "The people accountable are dead, sir. MacNaughton, Elphinstone, Shelton is a hostage. There's no one left to blame." Sale turns back. "Then they'll blame Afghanistan, and we'll come back with more troops, more guns. We'll punish them for this." Brydon thinks about the passes, the mountains, the Ghilzai tribesmen who can melt into the hills and reappear anywhere, the winter that kills more efficiently than any army. "We'll try," he says quietly, "but Afghanistan doesn't lose. It just waits." Over the next few days, a handful of other survivors trickle into Jalalabad. a sepoy from the 37th Bengal Native Infantry who hid in a cave for 3 days, then walked to Jalalabad. He's the only survivor from his entire battalion. 2 British privates who escaped during the final chaos and survived by pretending to be dead when Afghan scavengers passed. An Afghan guide who was with the column and managed to blend in with local tribesmen after the collapse. In total, fewer than a dozen soldiers make it to Jalalabad on their own. The hostages, those who survive captivity, will be ransomed months later. General Elphinstone will die in Afghan custody in April of dysentery and despair. Major Pottinger will survive and be released. Lieutenant Sturt's pregnant wife will survive, deliver a baby in captivity, and eventually be freed. But of the 16,500 who left Kabul on January 6, 1842, fewer than 100 will ever see freedom again. The rest are gone, buried in snow, scattered across 90 miles of Afghan mountains, lost to history, except as numbers in casualty reports. Brydon becomes the face of the disaster. Artists sketch him as he arrived, blood-soaked, barely alive, the lone survivor. The image spreads across India, then to London. Newspapers publish the story, the sole survivor of Kabul. It's not entirely accurate. There are other survivors, but Brydon is the one who rode through the gates, who delivered the news, who spoke the words that will echo through history. Where is the army? I am the army. He recovers slowly. The head wound heals, leaving a long scar across his scalp that he'll carry for the rest of his life. The frostbite costs him 2 toes, some hearing in his left ear, permanent sensitivity to cold, but he's alive. On January 20th, 1842, a week after his arrival, General Sale calls him to the command quarters. "Dr. Brydon, you're being sent back to India. You need proper medical care, and you need to deliver a full report to the Governor-General." "What about the hostages, sir? The relief effort?" "The Army of Retribution is being assembled in Peshawar. General Pollock will march to Kabul in the spring. We'll recover what prisoners we can, punish the Afghans for this massacre. But that's not your concern anymore. You've done your part." Brydon nods. He knows what "done your part" means. You survived when 16,000 others didn't. That's enough. More than enough. He leaves Jalalabad on January 22nd, part of a small convoy heading back to India through the Khyber Pass. He rides a fresh horse provided by the garrison. His torn, blood-stained uniform has been replaced, his medical kit restocked. But he carries the same papers, the letters from home, the medical notes, the sketch of Scotland, cut in half by an Afghan sword, soaked in his blood. He folds them carefully and tucks them into his new cap. As the convoy moves west through the Khyber Pass, Brydon looks back one last time at Afghanistan, at the mountains, at the passes that swallowed an army. Somewhere in those mountains, 16,000 people are still there, frozen, forgotten, waiting for spring thaws that will reveal their bones. Captain Skinner and the 44th Regiment, who held the line until the end, the Sepoy battalions, Indian soldiers who fought loyally for a British cause and died far from home, the camp followers, 12,000 civilians, women and children who had no choice but to follow and no chance to survive, officers and soldiers whose names were recorded in regimental rolls but whose graves will never be marked. All of them gone, and William Brydon, Assistant Surgeon, East India Company Army, 29 years old, riding away alive. He doesn't know why he survived, doesn't know what twist of fate or divine intervention or pure random chance meant life for him and death for everyone else. He just knows that he'll carry them with him for the rest of his life. 16,000 ghosts, and one man still breathing. Spring 1842, News of the disaster reaches Kolkata in late January. By February, it's in London. The newspapers explode with shock, outrage, and demands for vengeance. 16,000 lost in Afghan snows. The greatest military catastrophe in British history. Sole survivor tells of massacre. Parliament convenes emergency sessions. The East India Company is hauled before committees. Members of Parliament demand answers. How could an entire army be destroyed? Who authorized the withdrawal? Who failed to provide adequate supplies, adequate leadership, adequate planning? The dead are blamed. Macnaghten for trusting Akbar Khan, Elphinstone for indecision and incompetence, Shelton for arrogance and poor tactical judgment. None of them are alive to defend themselves. The public doesn't want explanations. They want blood. In March 1842, the Governor-General of India, Lord Ellenborough, authorizes the Army of Retribution. The mission is explicit: recover the hostages, punish the Afghans for the massacre, and restore British honor. The command goes to General George Pollock, a 60-year-old artillery officer with decades of experience in India. Pollock is methodical, cautious, professional, everything Elphinstone was not. He assembles his force in Peshawar, 8,000 British and Indian troops, well supplied, well armed, supported by heavy artillery. This is not the starving, demoralized garrison that left Kabul in January. This is a professional military expedition designed to crush resistance. On April 5, 1842, Pollock's army enters the Khyber Pass. The Afghans try to stop them. Tribesmen occupy the heights, fire down on the column, attempt the same tactics that destroyed Elphinstone's retreat. But Pollock's force is different. They move in coordinated columns with strong flank guards. They seize the high ground before advancing through each defile. They deploy artillery to suppress enemy positions. They fight with discipline and overwhelming firepower. The Khyber Pass is forced in 3 days with minimal casualties. By mid-April, Pollock reaches Jalalabad and relieves General Sale's garrison. William Brydon is no longer there. He was sent back to India in late January to recover and to deliver his report to the authorities. But the soldiers at Jalalabad tell Pollock what happened. They show him the mountains to the west where 16,000 people disappeared. Pollock consolidates his force and waits. Another column, commanded by General William Knott, is marching from Kandahar in the south. The plan is to converge on Kabul from 2 directions: trap Akbar Khan's forces, recover the hostages, and burn the Afghan capital in retaliation. On September 7, 1842, Pollock's army begins the march to Kabul. They retrace the route of the retreat, moving through the same passes where the column died 5 months earlier. What they find is horrifying.
Khurd Kabul Pass is carpeted with bones, skulls, rib cages, the small, fragile bones of children, hands and feet, all half buried in the melting snow, scattered across 5 miles of gorge. British soldiers walk through the pass in silence, stepping over the remains of comrades, families, civilians who died screaming in the cold. Some of the dead can still be identified: a uniform jacket with regimental insignia, a woman's shawl, a child's shoe. Most are anonymous, just bones bleaching in the sun. The army doesn't stop to bury them. There are too many. The pass itself has become a grave. They continue toward Kabul. Akbar Khan's forces melt away before them. The tribal levies, their bloodlust satisfied and their coffers full of British loot, retreat into the mountains. The chiefs who supported the uprising scatter to their strongholds. Kabul is retaken without a major battle. The hostages are recovered, those who survived. General Elphinstone is not among them. He died in April in Afghan captivity of dysentery and shame. His body is recovered and given a military burial.
Major Eldred Pottinger is found alive, gaunt and hollow-eyed, but alive. Lieutenant Sturt survived captivity. His wife survived, gave birth to a daughter while imprisoned. Both mother and child are recovered. Captain Colin Mackenzie is freed. Brigadier Shelton is found alive, bitter and defiant to the end. In total, 95 hostages are recovered. British officers, their wives and children, a handful of sepoys. Out of 16,500 who left Kabul, 95 are brought back alive, less than 1%. Pollock gives the order for reprisal. The Great Bazaar of Kabul, where MacNaughton's severed hands were displayed on pikes, is burned to the ground. Afghan prisoners are hanged in the streets. Villages suspected of harboring tribal fighters are destroyed. It's revenge, not justice, but revenge is what London demanded. Some of Pollock's own officers protest. Captain Henry Havelock, who will later become famous during the Indian Mutiny, writes in his journal, "We destroy what we cannot hold, punish those we cannot govern, and call it victory." But the orders stand. On October 12, 1842, Pollock's army withdraws from Kabul. They march back through the passes, past the bones still scattered in the gorges, past Jalalabad, through the Khyber Pass, and back into India. By November, every British soldier has left Afghanistan. No treaties are signed, no client governments are installed, no territorial gains are made. The British invaded Afghanistan in 1839 to prevent Russian influence. They installed a puppet king, Shah Shuja, who was murdered by his own people in 1842. They occupied Kabul for 2 years, bled themselves dry, and withdrew with nothing to show for it except 16,000 dead. The First Anglo-Afghan War ends exactly where it began, with the British in India and the Afghans in their mountains. Except now 16,000 people are dead, and Afghanistan has earned a reputation it will carry for the next 2 centuries, the graveyard of empires. William Brydon returns to England in late 1842. He's supposed to be a hero, the man who survived, the lone witness to the greatest disaster in British military history. Instead, he feels like a ghost. He's brought before military boards of inquiry, questioned for hours about every detail of the retreat. What happened in the passes? Why did the column fail? Could anything have been done differently? He answers honestly. The cantonment was indefensible. Elphinstone was incapable of command. MacNaughton trusted Akbar Khan against all evidence. The cold and the terrain killed as many people as the Afghans. But the questioners want more. They want to know about individual decisions. Why were the camp followers not left behind? Why didn't the column fight its way out immediately instead of negotiating? Why was so much ammunition wasted? Brydon grows frustrated. You're asking why 16,000 starving, freezing people didn't make perfect tactical decisions while being shot at and dying of cold. The answer is because they were human. The inquiry moves on to other witnesses. Brydon is dismissed. He's invited to speak at public events, military dinners, historical societies, patriotic rallies. He declines most. When he does accept, he speaks in a flat, factual tone that disappoints audiences expecting tales of heroism. At a dinner in London, someone asks him, "Dr. Brydon, what was the worst moment of the retreat?" Brydon stares into his wineglass for a long time. The passes, the children freezing, the sepoys who died fighting to protect civilians they couldn't save, Skinner's last stand, the pony collapsing a mile from safety, the sword strike that should have killed him but didn't. All of it. He finally says, "Every moment was the worst moment." The questioner looks disappointed, but Brydon doesn't care. He's not here to entertain. He's here because they asked him to be, and refusing would draw more attention than accepting. The nightmares begin in the spring of 1843. He's back in the passes, walking through snow that never ends. Bodies on all sides, frozen in positions of agony. He tries to help them, but his hands pass through them like smoke. Sometimes he dreams he's still riding, the pony beneath him, dying. Jalalabad always visible on the horizon, but never getting closer. He wakes gasping, his sheets soaked with sweat, his hand reaching for the pistol he no longer carries. His family tries to help. His sister invites him to stay at their home in Scotland. His mother writes letters urging him to rest, to recover, to move forward with his life. He tries. He returns to medical practice, working as a surgeon in Scotland. He's competent, professional, respected. His colleagues notice he's quiet, reserved, but he does good work. He marries in 1846, a woman named Mary, patient and kind, who doesn't ask about Afghanistan unless he brings it up. He doesn't bring it up. They have children. He builds a life that from the outside looks normal. But inside, he's still in the passes. In 1847, an artist named William Barnes Wallen approaches him. Wallen wants to paint a historical piece, Remnants of an Army, depicting Brydon's arrival at Jalalabad, the lone survivor on a dying horse, bloodied but triumphant. Brydon agrees reluctantly. He sits for the preliminary sketches, describes the pony, the uniform, the wound. The painting becomes famous. It's exhibited in London, reproduced in newspapers, used in military academies to teach about the perils of poor command. Brydon hates it, because the painting shows a hero, a man who conquered impossible odds, a symbol of British resilience. But Brydon doesn't feel like a hero. He feels like a thief who stole 16,000 lives. Years pass. The memories don't fade, but he learns to function with them. The nightmares become less frequent. The guilt becomes a weight he carries instead of a wound that bleeds. In 1857, the Indian Mutiny erupts. Brydon, now 44 years old, volunteers to return to India as a medical officer. He serves through the rebellion, treating wounded soldiers, organizing field hospitals. People ask him why he went back after what he survived. Why return to India? Because I'm a surgeon, he says. Men are dying. That's where I'm needed. He doesn't say the rest. That part of him never left Afghanistan. That part of him is still in the passes with the 16,000. That going back to India is the closest he can come to rejoining them. He survives the mutiny and returns to Scotland in 1859. On March 20th, 1873, at the age of 61, William Brydon dies in Scotland. His obituary in the Times calls him the sole survivor of the Kabul retreat and praises his remarkable fortitude and service to the Crown. His funeral is attended by military officers, fellow surgeons, family and friends. He's buried with full honors. His headstone reads simply, William Brydon, M.D., Survivor of Kabul, 1842. Among his personal effects, his family finds a journal, mostly routine medical observations, supply notes, professional correspondence. But the final entry, dated April 15, 1842, written months after his return from Afghanistan, is different. I am asked what I remember most. They expect me to speak of the cold, or the fighting, or the fear. But what I remember is the silence after. When the shooting stopped and the column had passed, and you could hear the wind moving through the pass. And underneath it, very faint, the sound of people dying, calling for help that would not come. I rode on because to stop was to die. I rode on because I had a horse and others did not. I rode on because I am human, and humans choose survival even when it means leaving others behind. I do not know if I am blessed or cursed. I lived when 16,000 died. I cannot say why. I can only carry them with me, these 16,000 ghosts, and hope that bearing witness to their deaths gives some small meaning to their sacrifice. If there is a God, I will ask him one day, why me? Why was I spared? Until then, I live, I work, I remember. That is all I can do. The journal is donated to the British Library, where it sits in the archives for decades, rarely read. But the words remain, a testimony to survivors' guilt, to the cost of being the last man standing. The First Anglo-Afghan War becomes a cautionary tale. For decades afterward, British military academies study the retreat. Officers analyze what went wrong at every level: strategic, operational, tactical. The lessons are clear. Don't occupy what you cannot hold. Don't trust political arrangements backed only by gold. Don't ignore logistics. Don't underestimate terrain and weather. Don't put incompetent commanders in charge of impossible situations. The lessons officially are learned, but empires have short memories. In 1878, the British returned to Afghanistan. The Second Anglo-Afghan War begins over disputes about Russian influence, the same reason as the First War. British and Indian troops invade, occupy Kabul, install a friendly government. The war lasts 2 years. The British achieve some tactical successes, but the strategic situation is identical. They cannot hold the country. The cost is too high. The terrain is too difficult. The population is too hostile. They withdraw in 1880, having gained nothing. In 1919, the Third Anglo-Afghan War erupts. It lasts 1 month. The British withdraw again, this time granting Afghanistan full independence.
The pattern is clear to anyone willing to see it. Afghanistan is unconquerable, not because its armies are superior, but because its terrain is merciless. Its winters are deadly, and its people outlast every occupier. The British learned this lesson in blood 3 times over 7 decades, but other empires don't learn from Britain's mistakes. In December 1979, the Soviet Union invades Afghanistan. They bring modern weapons, helicopter gunships, mechanized infantry, overwhelming firepower. They're confident they can succeed where the 19th century British failed. 10 years later, they withdraw in defeat. 15,000 Soviet soldiers dead, tens of thousands wounded, the Soviet economy shattered by the cost of the war. The Soviet Union collapses 2 years later. The Afghan War is not the only cause, but it's a significant factor. The graveyard of empires claims another victim. In October 2001, NATO forces enter Afghanistan following the September 11th attacks. The mission is counterterrorism, not occupation. But years stretch into decades. The mountains remain. The Taliban adapts. The foreign soldiers, despite superior technology and firepower, cannot impose permanent control. By 2021, NATO withdraws. The Taliban returns to power. 20 years, trillions of dollars, thousands of lives. The outcome is the same as every previous intervention. Afghanistan doesn't defeat its invaders through superior military force. It defeats them through patience, through terrain, through the simple fact that foreign armies eventually go home, but Afghans remain in Afghanistan. The pattern has repeated for nearly 2 centuries. The British in 1842, 1880, 1919. The Soviets in 1989.
NATO in 2021. Every empire believes it will be different. Every empire learns the same lesson at the same cost. In the Hindu Kush, the passes remain unchanged. Kurd Kabul, Tungi Tariki. The gorges where 16,000 people died in 1842. Local guides still tell stories. They point to places where bones emerge from the melting snow. Buttons, buckles, scraps of cloth, children's shoes, regimental insignia. The bones don't last forever. Wind and water scatter them. Animals carry them away. But every few years, a spring thaw reveals something new. A skull, a fragment of a musket, a British coin dated 1841. Physical reminders that 16,000 people died here, chasing an imperial ambition that was doomed from the start. The guides refuse to camp in certain places. They hurry through Kurd Kabul even in summer, their eyes on the cliffs as if expecting gunfire that stopped echoing 180 years ago. When asked why, they shrug. The dead are still here. The mountains remember. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And in Afghanistan, the rhyme is always the same. Come with your armies. Come with your plans. Come with your certainty that you're different from those who came before. The mountains will wait. The winter will come. And in the end, you will leave. If you leave at all. 16,500 people left Kabul on January 6, 1842. One man reached Jalalabad on January 13th. 7 days, 90 miles, an entire army erased. The numbers are almost impossible to understand. In 1 week, across 5 mountain passes, the largest British force in Afghanistan simply ceased to exist. Not defeated in a single catastrophic battle, not surrendered in a negotiated peace, simply dissolved, frozen, killed, scattered like ash across the Hindu Kush. The causes are easy to list: incompetent leadership, poor planning, cultural arrogance, broken promises, brutal terrain, merciless cold. But lists don't capture the reality. The reality is 12,000 unarmed civilians, women, children, servants, dying in the snow because they followed an army that couldn't protect them. The reality is professional soldiers, British and Indian, men who'd served for decades, dying not in glorious battle, but in chaotic retreats through frozen passes. The reality is Captain James Skinner standing with 50 men against 200 cavalry because someone had to hold the line, even when the line was already broken. The reality is William Brydon riding past people begging for help because stopping meant dying with them, and one more death wouldn't save anyone. The reality is 16,000 individual deaths. 16 people who woke up on January 6th not knowing they had 7 days or less to live. History remembers the retreat from Kabul as a military disaster, a cautionary tale, a dark chapter in the story of empire. But for the people who lived it and died in it, it was something else. It was cold beyond imagining. It was watching your children freeze in your arms. It was fighting with empty muskets because the ammunition ran out days ago. It was choosing between impossible options and knowing all of them led to death. It was the moment when civilization's thin promises, safe passage, honorable terms, negotiated withdrawal, revealed themselves as lies. William Brydon survived by being mounted, being mobile, being willing to ride ahead when others stayed behind. He never forgave himself for it. The passes of the Hindu Kush still stand, the snow still falls, and somewhere beneath it, in valleys and gorges scattered across 90 miles of Afghan mountains, 16,000 voices are still calling, for water, for warmth, for help that will never come, for home they'll never see. No one answers. No one ever will. This is history that refuses to be forgotten. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the cost of empire, the nature of survival, the weight of impossible choices, hit that like button. It genuinely helps us bring more stories like this to light. Drop a comment below. What lesson should we take from the 1842 retreat? Do empires ever really learn from history? Or are we doomed to repeat the same mistakes in different mountains, different wars, different centuries? And if you want more history that challenges, provokes, and refuses to look away from hard truths, subscribe to Dark History Class. Because there are more stories like this. Stories that deserve to be told. Stories that remind us what human beings are capable of, both the nobility and the horror. Thanks for watching. Remember Kabul 1842. Remember the 16,000. Remember Dr. William Brydon, who came home carrying their ghosts. And remember Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires, where the mountains are patient and the snow covers everything, but never quite buries the past. I'll see you in the next one.